Now, how are Nigeria, like Tim says, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory?
Funny enough, sorry, my connection's been god awful. It's actually not defeat we're snatching. We just can't help but draw. We've played 8 qualifiers and we've drawn 5 games. The only team we've beaten in a 16 pool is Rwanda. Without Rwanda, we'd be in dire straits. Benin beat us for the first time in their history. We drew with South Africa twice because they decided to make their pitch a rugby pitch and just stop us from playing any sort of coherent football. And fair play to them, they're entitled to do that. Although they did field an ineligible player back in March and yet
Oh, well,
haven't been
yeah,
punished for it.
yeah.
So I think personally, CAF has got to do a better job. FIFA, whoever you want to blame, they need to lay down the law a lot firmer. But yeah, we can't. I'm not going to blame refs, blame anything other than ourselves. We've been completely underwhelming, multiple managers throughout the qualifiers, and nothing is really clipped.
Yeah, that is a good point. CAF has some questions that need to be answered here. Like, as you mentioned, the ineligible player back in March, but also, what are they going to do with the last place finishes? There's talk about results of second place teams against last place teams in the group getting scrapped. Those are just rumors, nothing official, but there are some things that still need to be answered in Africa. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting finish for sure.
I wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it feels like selective judgment because if you look at the case of Emilio and Sue, he scores 2 winning goals for Equatorial Guinea, but because he wasn't eligible for them when he first declared for Spain in whether 2005 or a long ass time ago, excuse the French, they then forfeit 2 games and lose both of them 3-0. But in this case, higher profile country, they haven't done anything. So it seems like they just choose who to punish and when to let things slide. So the inconsistency is frustrating everybody.
Yeah, you can speak French on this program. Thankfully, it's not the BBC where you have to stick to the English. So feel free to bring in some French. How are football fans in Nigeria taking this? Because on the one hand, all we are asking.
What's the argument? What's the argument? There has to be an argument. So what's the argument?
I think for once there's genuine unity because everyone. The only indecision is who to blame. Some people blame the players. Some people say it can't be the players. Some people blame the managers, but some people say we've had multiple managers, whether it's Finidi George, Eric Chell, and nothing is working. The setup I could go on for a long time. There was a lot of head loss yesterday because it was as if the fans knew what it meant. We were up for it, but they weren't. There was a lack of urgency as much as anything because you can excuse a lack of quality in certain areas. But Nigeria have some of the best quality in Africa. We're a pot 1 team. And we're the only pot 1 team that is not going to qualify, which is embarrassing. There are 9 pot 1 countries, and we are the only one not set to qualify. So everyone is so disappointed that the biggest World Cup ever, and it's almost guaranteed we won't be there. Because even with the right now, there are 9 pots. The winners of each one goes through automatically, and then the second place teams duke it out. We're not even second, and to get second will be a miracle. And it's whoever gets the most points. We're on 14. Countries like Cape Verde are 19, Madagascar are up there as well. So you can't really make the argument that we'll make it in any capacity. So there is no argument at the moment. Everyone's just dejected. Obviously, we'll support till the wheels fall off. And everyone's sort of turning their eyes towards Morocco 2026, which is the African Cup of Nations, because we came second last time, losing to Cote d'Ivoire in the final. So it's a case of, okay, if we can go and win that, we'll feel a little bit better. It won't paper over it's sort of putting a plaster on a surgery wound. It's not quite the same as making it to a World Cup. But we haven't won the African Cup of Nations since 2013, so it would be very uplifting considering we've lost in the semis, and final.
Are there massive regional tensions? That we should be picking more people from this part of the country or more people from that part of the country. Is that an internal question?
It's an interesting one you mentioned. I think the biggest one I've seen recently is that with Osimhen injured, Tolu should play, the Wolves striker that they've just signed. He should be the one playing. But in terms of regional tensions, I'd say it was much worse 2013, the days of Onazi, Sunday Mba, Ahmed Musa, where it was more controversial selections. Nowadays, there isn't as much selection headache. And yet Eric Chelsea seems to still make some mistakes. There's debates between who should be holding the midfield next to Iwobi. Should it be on Didi? Should it be on Yeka? There's a young centre-back who's on loan from Brentford. I've just forgotten his name, Frederick. Can't remember Frederick's first or last name, but he's played exceptionally well in the last game. And then this game, Troost Ekong's brought in, and he just happens to score an own goal. And yes, he's the captain, but it's just not great optics when a system works. We get a 1-0 win against Rwanda, you change it, and the person you bring in then scores the own goal. You shoehorn Bassi to left back to bring him back in, and then he scores an own goal, and that's the difference at the end of the day. And again, I can't blame refereeing because our goal shouldn't have stood. To be honest, Bassi headed it onto Des as it hit a hand in there, but the lack of VAR essentially, or lack of use of VAR, meant that we did get away with it, but it won't count for anything now. But I wouldn't say there's tensions within the country, at least.
But even some of those players that you mentioned there, apologies, Joel, give over to you in a moment. Even some of the players that you mentioned there, you're thinking some of them are household names. You haven't even mentioned Ademola Lookman yet. You know, Nigeria's got a decent squad of players if they can only make it click. Okay, you lose Osimhen, but you've got other strikers you mentioned already. And in terms of strength in depth, in a way, I feel the World Cup without Nigeria is a loss for all football lovers because we bring something special to the World Cup. The fans bring something special to the World Cup. The players bring something remarkable to the World Cup. You know, we like to dribble and show our skills on the world stage so that we get a big transfer afterwards. That's what we love to do, and we do it really well. So in some respects, we're like the Scotland of the World Cup. You know, there's no world, as the Scottish would say, no World Cup without Scotland. And it feels though that we are how many times bigger than Scotland in Nigeria? Is it 40 or 50 times bigger than Scotland, mate? Where are all the great footballers of Nigeria when it comes to a World Cup? Where are they?
It's incredibly frustrating because, as you mentioned, even from the cultural aspect, look at the kit. 2018, everybody loved that night kit. It became a cultural icon, essentially. And then 2022, we missed. And okay, you can miss one World Cup. Even Italy missed World Cups. But then you're missing another one back-to-back, the biggest ever, and it's a real kick in the teeth, especially when we're essentially a local champion. We're supposed to be an African giant, and we're not living up to that billing. And in terms of, you talked about Lookman, this is somebody that won Africa CAF Player of the Year. And yet for Nigeria, he's being moved out of position to accommodate Moses Simon, who is just the epitome of pace and power and has no European pedigree the way Ademola Lookman has, who scored a hat-trick in a European final, and yet we're moving him out of position. And obviously, football within the continent operates very differently. You could bring 2018 France to African Cup of Nations, and they would not be outstanding. They would genuinely struggle. Not to say they wouldn't win, but it's just a completely different game. And Nigeria is blessed in terms of talent, but unfortunately that talent is concentrated into the same positions. We have a lot of strikers, a lot of wingers. There's still Samuel Chukwueze. It will be once upon a time as a winger. Now he's more of a creative presence in the middle. There was Kelechi Iheanacho. Ahmed Musa's beyond his time now. There's Paul Onuachu. There are a lot of attacking players. And then further down the pitch, it doesn't really... We're sort of looking, not scraps, that's disingenuous to say scraps, but other than positions like right back, but Olaino's Istanbul, Nwabali in goal, we're sort of looking around and saying, okay, who can we fit in? How can we make this work? And I don't want to make excuses because there are inferior countries who have less talented players who manage to make it work. But sometimes we saw this with England in their golden generation. Having the personnel in the same areas sometimes is to the detriment of the team because you end up shoehorning players in because, you can't leave out Scholes, you can't leave out Gerrard, you can't leave out Lampard. Then they're not actually the best player for those positions.
I just wanted to add. So again, us with the numbers, we give Nigeria a 4% chance to make it to the World Cup right now. So
exaggeration, isn't it?
Is that around 4% or is that 4
I rounded it
points?
for you, Tim. I rounded it for you. I rounded it up. Yes.
It's actually 3 point something.
Yeah, it's 3 point. Yeah, it's okay. Fine. If you want to be specific, 3.79.
Oh,
3.79. So, yeah, and yeah, just going back to what Atolani said earlier, you know, the second place playoff spot right now is like their only hope, and that's not even looking very good at the moment because first of all, they don't occupy second place in their group. That's Benin, and in order to get to the playoff in that second place playoff, you have to be in the top 4 of all the second place teams in Africa. There's 9 groups, and right now Benin's in 8th place out of 9 out of all of those second place spots. So, you know, it's tough. You've got the likes of Gabon, Madagascar, DR Congo, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, even Uganda and Namibia are ahead of Benin right now in that group in terms of points. So, they're in a really tricky spot right now. Like, they've got Lesotho away, Nigeria should be able to handle that. But then they have Benin at home, and Benin, as I just mentioned, is the team that is directly competing with them for that spot. So even if they were to win that game, there's no guarantee that they would have enough points to be in that second place. So, yeah, it's just really looking tough, unfortunately, for Nigeria.